DJI Action 2, is that the right camera for you? In this video I will talk about all the stuff that DJI is not mentioning in their marketing material. And what better way to do that than to take a nice walk here in the nice fall colors around Fredensborg Castle. So DJI released a new action camera, the DJI Action 2, on the 27th of October. Many of us was very surprised by the design, as it turned out it was not simply a revamped version of the Osmo Action, but it was a brand new design from the ground up. And a closer look at the specs that revealed some pretty interesting details about this camera. It was capable of recording 4K, which is basically not a surprise, but it can do it up to 120 frames per second, which will produce some pretty awesome slow motion capabilities. Opposed to the original Osmo Action, a 155 degrees field of view, which will make the camera super wide and capable of capturing everything. The sensor was upgraded from the original 1 or 2/3 sensor, which is used in many of DJI products, to a 1 or 1.7 inch sensor. The whole camera concept is redone and now is being delivered as a modular magnetic design, where you can change the basic functionality of the camera or expand it by just snapping on different accessories. One of the accessories is a touchscreen module that you snap on, and that will give you easy access to all the functionality that is possible with the camera. DJI invented a new magnetic attachment system that will open up for a variety of mounting options. The camera provides an upgrade of the Rocksteady technology, which is now version 2.0, and it adds horizon lock as well, which is a pretty neat feature that I come to love from the GoPro Max that I have, where you can simply turn the camera like this, and then the horizon will stay completely locked. That's very useful, especially when you're walking around, riding snowboards, riding electric unicycles and stuff like that. The main camera by itself is waterproof down to 10 meters. You can extend that to 60 meters if you are mounting the camera, including one of the accessories in the waterproof case. The camera will of course be able to do hyperlapse, time-lapse and slow motion. Audio is also supposed to be significantly improved with a 4-mic stereo input, which is only available if you're using one of the accessories. The Action 2 comes in two variants, the dual screen combo and the power combo. The dual screen combo comes in around $519, where the power combo that adds an additional battery to the camera is around $399. The camera is super tiny. It's only 39 times 39 times 21 millimeter, and it weighs as little as 56 grams. And if you're adding either the touchscreen module or the power module, the weight will approximately double. Looking at DJI specifications, they state you will get 70 minutes of recording time of the base unit, and if you're adding the power module, you can expand the recording time up to 180 minutes. Both tests are done on artificial laboratory conditions, so we know this is likely going to be different in real life. So of course, with these specs, I was super excited. I could see a lot of usage for a camera with all the flexible mounting options that were offered. I was so close to deciding to purchase the camera, and then I decided, of course, to go and check out some of the other reviews that were put out. There's the sponsored ones. They're always praising the camera no matter how bad it is. But I also decided to check some reviews from people that have purchased the camera with their own money. And based on that, I actually decided not to purchase the camera. Let me tell you why. When you're recording with the action camera like I normally do when I'm on the road, it's all about minimizing what can go wrong during the recording. You want to make sure the audio is correct, you want to make sure that the exposure is correct of the footage, and all sorts of stuff. Having a camera that consists of that many parts, I could really be concerned that I would either lose some of the parts, have to deal with this on top of the other stuff that I'm dealing with when I'm out recording. I'm not sure the modular design is right for me. Even though there is a built-in battery in the base unit and you will be able to record, if you're planning to record over a longer period of time, you would need some extra batteries. And the only way to get that is to buy additional power modules. These power modules are not cheap. They're $75 a pop. So this means that you will easily add a lot of extra dollars to the bill if you're going to record for a longer period of time. And now we are talking charging. Because the unit is so compact, they've decided to not include any ports on the unit. So there's no way of charging the base unit by itself. You need to either strap on the touch screen module or the power module to be able to charge the unit. This might explain why DJI is not offering a standalone camera. Even though it would have been fairly easy for them to sort of design a magnetic plate that you could just pop onto the base unit, and in that way you could charge it with a USB-C or something similar. Maybe that's something we will see in the future. One thing that I do want to add is if you pop on one of these accessories, then it will instantly start charging the battery that's in the base unit. So if it has been attached for a longer period of time, you will be able to detach it and use the camera by itself. When I saw the original design, I was so excited because I thought it would be a perfect fit for my workflow. I could put the camera in one position, maybe with a magnetic mount I could put it on the car. Then I could bring the base unit with me, bring the audio really close to me, which would be pretty ideal when I'm doing tutorials, when I'm zipping around on my electric unicycle. Ideally, it would also have been great if I could use the touchscreen to sort of frame the shot to make sure that everything is nice and tight. Unfortunately, this is not possible. There's no connection between the touchscreen unit and the base camera when they are separated. And the touchscreen can only be mounted in one direction. You can't detach it and then flip it around 180 degrees, so it could make a bigger viewfinder on the back of the camera. That would have been a pretty sweet feature. And you will notice that the lens is fixed. So if you end up dropping the camera like I just did, you might end up with a scratched or cracked lens that can't be repaired. The good thing is DJI is offering the DJI Care Refresh insurance, and that's pretty cheap for this camera. It's only $25 and you'll be able to get 2 replacements within the first year. The first one is $19 in an additional fee, and then I think it's $32 or $39 for the second one. So that's pretty affordable and definitely something that I would recommend if you opt in for this camera anyway. As mentioned, there are no ports in the base unit, so there are no way of mounting an external SD card to the camera by itself. This means that you rely on the 32GB internal storage in the camera. If you subtract the amount of storage that is being used by sort of the firmware for the camera, then you will have around 22GB left. And if you record at the maximum bitrate, which is 130 megabit per second, that will translate into around 12 minutes of recording time that you will be able to store on the internal SD card. And quite frankly, that's quite limiting. I know the story is different if you're using a 4K 30 FPS or maybe go down to 1080p 30 FPS as well. But I can just say from previous experience using action cameras, I very easily during a day eat up at least 64GB of storage, even recording at 1080p. This would mean that you would have to handle this on the road and make sure to offload the footage from the camera. You would be able to add an external SD card to the unit, but then you need to attach one of the accessories, either the power module or the touch base. If you do that, it's possible to add up to 256GB SD card. And as far as I understand, it is possible to transfer the files from the camera onto the external SD card by just operating the menus. So that might mitigate the problem, but it's still an extra step that you need to handle when you're in the field. If you have to use the camera with the accessories attached, that kind of defeats the purpose of having a small compact camera. And when we are talking transferring of files, I see quite a few complaints around the interweb that this process is quite slow. Most of these things are minor issues, and you could sort of argue that you could work around them if it wasn't for the biggest issues that made me decide not to purchase the camera. Even though DJI is claiming that you can get 70 minutes of recording time and and all that stuff, it turns out if you decide to record in 4K 120 FPS, you would not get maybe more than 5-6 minutes of recording time before the camera shuts off due to overheating. It seems this little new innovative camera is very prone to heating issues. And for those of you that have used Sony cameras in the past, you know how super annoying it is to have a camera and you're setting everything up and and you're getting ready to record, and then just to find out that the camera shuts off because of overheating and you need to wait for it to cool down. Life is simply too short for overheating issues. So the way that this works on the camera, there's basically 2 settings that you can put in. There's a standard setting and there's a high temperature setting. If you use either or, that determines how hot the camera is allowed to be before it shuts off recording. If you're using the high temperature setting, the camera is really getting hot to the touch. And because the casing is made of aluminum, that is a very good heat conductive material, the camera will get so hot that you can barely touch it. So if that isn't bad enough, as this is one of the main features of the camera, I saw a video that was put out by Sean from Geekswana that showed that the high temperature setting is not available if you are in Europe. He showed recording times as limited as 3 to 4 minutes before the camera was shutting off due to overheating. So of course your fingers are not getting burned, but you're taking a severe penalty on top of the already limited recording time with this camera. So why is this the case in EU and Britain? This is likely because there are some directive. If the camera needs to be CE marked and put on the European market, there are some limitation to the maximum surface temperature on a consumer product. I don't know the exact directive, but I know there are certain limitations to how hot a consumer product is allowed to be. And this is most likely the reason why this option is not available in EU and Britain. As far as I've heard, the recording time is of course longer if you are bumping down the resolution or the frame rate to 30 frames per second and maybe down to 1080p. That is simply too short for me, as you need to recharge the camera to be able to use it again. If it was with a swappable battery, the story would be different. So my beef with this camera is that it's a fairly expensive camera. It's not like a cheap ass camera that you can pick up at Best Buy for $200 or such. You pay a lot of money for this, and if it's not capable of doing its base functionality like recording video, this is no camera for me. So I will skip the DJI Action 2 for now and continue with the Osmo Action 1, which is the one that I'm recording this video on. I thought it would be kind of funny to do a video about the Action 2 using the Action 1 alone, including the internal audio that this camera is capable of producing. There is no doubt that I have been pretty fond of the original Action camera from DJI. It has all of the stuff that I need when I'm on the road. It's a very compact unit. It's very easy to upgrade SD card, and it's very easy to upgrade storage. There's no doubt that I'm very excited about the original camera. It has a front-facing screen that will allow me sort of to frame the shot. It has a removable lens cover. It's a very compact unit with only a few buttons that does what it needs to do. It has like this quick shot button that will allow me to very easily shift between the different recording modes. And of course it has an exchangeable battery as well as an external SD card, so I can just pop in the storage that I need to be able to do this. This is a super cool camera. It has a few downsides. Some would say it's a bit limited in the field of view, and others would say that if you are recording in HDR mode, in the high dynamic range mode, it's not very ideal that the stabilization is not available. So for me, the Osmo Action is pretty nice, and I would kind of had hoped that DJI had decided to do like an iteration of that camera and fix some of the basic flaws about that. Then they could have released the Osmo Action 2 as a separate product line, because that is basically a different kind of beast. As the DJI Action 2 was sold as an action camera, you might want to hear it from a guy that's actually doing a lot of action sport, what he thinks about this camera. I participated in a live stream at my good friend Sean Oss's channel here the other day, where we talked about the pros and cons of the DJI Action 2. In case you missed that video, I'll make sure to link it through this card. I hope you liked this video. If you did, then feel free to give it a like. If you didn't like it, feel free to press the dislike button twice. Thank you for watching, and I'll be seeing you around.